Welcome to Chatting the Pictures. My name is Cara Finnegan, and I'm a writer, teacher, and historian of photography.
And I'm Michael Shaw. I'm a writer, a psychologist, and also publisher of Reading the Pictures.
At the start of an unusually early fire season, this photo from a National Forest Twitter account in Northern California is remarkable for its sense of dejection and misery.
This photo was taken by Lincoln Peters, a firefighter on the same crew as his captain, Justin Grunewald, pictured sitting on the horse bridge in Monterey County, California. It accompanied a tweet on June 24th from the Los Padres National Forest reporting on the containment status of California's Willow Fire.
One way to read this photo is to say this is a firefighter who's taking a break and a guy who seems pretty tired. His clothes and pants are covered with what looks like soot. He's carrying what appears to be a pretty heavy load on that backpack. It's dry. The leaves on the trees are not very green. The grasses in the background are dry and brown. What we see of the foreground is it's pretty gray. It's pretty dusty. So at one level, this is an image of one singular person in a particular place. But if you understand what's happening in parts of the West now, it's really also a fear-inducing photo.
There's a tone that underlies this photograph that is probably not consistent with the intention or at least with the situation between the photographer and the subject or the two men on the crew. I know that from having read at least one backstory where they interviewed both of them, where the message is, we got quite a fight on our hands. But that being said, when you look at this photograph, it's stunning to me in terms of what I would call the apocalyptic signaling. This shows an extraordinary amount of not just duress, but also the sense, in contrast to the American can-do spirit, where it feels like the battle's lost before we've even started. Wildfires in California have already burned 3 times more land than at the same point in time as last year's record season. And last year, we had 10 million acres that were burned as opposed to 4.5 million acres the year before. So these guys may be up for the challenge, but that's not what I'm reading in this photograph.
When you think about those statistics about the continually unprecedented escalation in terms of these early fire seasons, the photo also invites us to think about that simply because we tend in the West to read from left to right. So we have him on the left, and if this guy looks ahead of him, there's all this open space on the right side of the image, which really kind of flags for us that uncertain future that you're talking about him, the sense that what's ahead of them is not going to be a good thing.
I think those are really good points in terms of the actual elements of the photograph that create this apocalyptic signaling. And I think there's other pieces here too that are worth pointing out and give a real sense of not just distress, but trauma. For example, this is not about rest because the captain is still wearing his 50-pound backpack. Also, it's strange how he's tensing and raising his right hand. And then there's the fallen hat and his grip on the hoe. These elements make this more akin to a war image and the experience of shell shock than they do to just, an ordinary sense of exhaustion.
When this photo was originally posted on Twitter, a number of people were praising this firefighter in particular and firefighters in general, saying these folks are heroic. What they're doing is incredible. And that's very much true. This is highly elite, very specific, challenging, difficult, backbreaking, important work. But what those kinds of comments also highlight is the way that the image triggers in us that kind of man versus nature trope, right? The individual man fighting nature, fighting back against nature. And that raises an interesting set of questions, particularly when we're thinking about why we have wildfires, why they are becoming unprecedented in scale and tragedy. Is the problem really man versus nature? Or should we be thinking about this as human against what humans have done to and with nature in terms of structural issues, political issues, economic issues? So to the extent that a photo like this very rightly valorizes the really, really important hard work that folks like the firefighters are doing and the experiences of people whose homes are being threatened and who are having to evacuate, it also obscures for me those bigger picture questions about policy, about economics, and about how we, quote unquote, collectively as a public combat this problem in the future.